Alright, what's going on, family? It's your boy 804, bringing you some delicious, nutritious Amonkhet Premier Draft this morning. This has been pretty fun so far. I've only actually done 2 sealeds, but the format's pretty great. I actually only started playing in Shadows over Innistrad, so by the time I got to Amonkhet, I hadn't actually really explored Limited all that much. This was, of course, before Arena came out, and up until that point I'd actually only played in paper, I think. But alright, here we go. Pack one, pick one. So, we get a pretty... Actually, I guess he's not all that crazy for a Mythic and Limited. 5 mana 4/6 with Afflict 3. I guess he does an okay job of kind of allowing you to cast huge spells at the end of your turn, but honestly this really doesn't seem all that great. I guess there's really not much in the pack otherwise. Cartouche, I would say, is probably the second best card, but you know, for a Mythic, a 5 mana 4/6 with a 5/3, I mean, I don't even know if the second part of the text here is really going to matter that much. I mean, it's good, don't get me wrong. It's not a bad card for Limited by any means, but for a Mythic creature that is kind of meant to be I would imagine, one of the big boys. Oh my, Sifter Worm's pretty sweet, as is Naga Vitalist. Essence Scatter's probably the best blue card. Don't think Rest in Peace is going to matter. Honestly, I like Sifter Worm. If we're going to play a game, I guess you probably don't want to draft the ramp payoffs until you get the ramp card, but Sifter Worm is just insane, right? I mean, Scry 3 on a big creature also gains some life. I think I'm about it. We're going to go for green-red here. Probably should have been Essence Scatter, even Hieroglyphic Illumination there would have been pretty good. I do like Aven Windguide, but we're pretty far from it. The deserts are fine, nothing great. Oracle, nothing crazy. I actually think I'm just on the Feral Prowler. It'll help us get into the late game, as well as draw us cards when we need to trade it off. That's a decent card. Nothing crazy though. Pathmaker Initiate's fine. Lethal Sting is pretty good. And then we got some deserts. I don't really think the companion is anything crazy. I think I'm actually just going to pick up Lethal Sting here. Could potentially also be Shimmer Skill Drake. Maybe these aren't real reasons yet to, you know what, I'm actually just going to grab a desert. All things considered, the desert there seemed fine. So here are probably the 3 best green commons, basically. Actually kind of difficult to decide between all of these. I imagine if we pass any of them, the other cards are going to... We're not going to see any of them again, but we'll do the Cartouche here. It is probably... I mean, I guess the Cartouche goes in every green deck, basically regardless, whereas the Ritualist, I don't know, Ritualist is honestly just insane as well. Getting the double tap for splash colors too. It was probably the Ritualist there, but especially given the fact that we have our 7-drop that we can exert on turn 5 to just slam. Probably should have been the Ritualist, but ask and you shall receive. So here I am 100% slamming the Ritualist. there's a chance the person we're passing to, I guess to our left here, could be convinced about green if we passed them a Ritualist and a Naga Vitalist. They actually saw 2. So there's a good chance that they could also be drafting green, so I wouldn't expect to see much of it. That being said, we also passed some pretty good blue cards. Essence Scatter, Hieroglyphic Illumination, Shimmer Scale Drake in that last pack. In terms of black, we passed a Lord of Accursed and a Lethal Sting. So nothing too crazy. Definitely think we're just going to slam as many of these Ritualists as possible. Allows us to splash for other giant bombs if we manage to draw them. There are plenty of big toys in this format to play with. I have already gotten completely blown out by Overwhelming Splendor while I already had Archfiend of Ilfnir out on the battlefield and everything, so if we get access to one of those just giant game-ending spells, there's a good chance I'll be able to draft it even if it's nowhere near our colors, simply given the fact that that we will be able to splash with Ritualist. So here, we really haven't seen that much good red. We've passed a lot of good blue, unfortunately. I do think green-blue is probably... Could also just be the Quarry Hauler. Completely cut off blue. I think Hieroglyphic Illumination is just good enough that we're not going to really miss the Quarry Hauler there. Don't think we're really a mill deck. Do like the Bloodlust Insider and more aggressive decks, but it doesn't really look like we're there. So I think this is a decent start to the draft. I certainly, I probably did not draft optimally. Maybe we tumbled a little bit here on the Neheb, but the truth is we could play green-blue and still splash Neheb if we wanted to with double Ritualist. I'm not saying that's the right move here by any means, but it is a possibility. Also, maybe there's something I'm missing here. A flip 3, I guess, in an aggressive format, maybe that actually means more than I guess what I'm considering it to do. It's interesting. The sharpshooter's there. Not a huge fan of the Oracle. I guess maybe we play that instead though. Here we'll grab a Blur. So we've got a little mix of stuff here. Certainly all playables though. Wow. Okay, so this pack has just a lot of good cards here. We've got another Ritualist. We've got a Braid. We have Spring to Mind as well. And I'm thinking it might be the Spring to Mind. I'm not I guess my hesitation with that is Harsh Mentor's pretty decent with all of the land synergies, things like that. Exert, it can represent a lot of damage over the course of the game. I do also think the Aftermath cards are really powerful, and given the fact that we're pretty positive we're going to be playing green here, but we're not actually positive that we're going to be playing blue or red. I do think Mirage Mirror is pretty good. It kind of adapts with the game. You do have to pay 2 mana every time you want to use it, which is certainly not ideal. I think I like Aven Initiate though. It kind of seems like we're going to be more of like a green-blue monsters deck that seeks to get into the later stages of the game. And I mean, it certainly looks like green-blue is open. If we are one of the only green decks in this table, I certainly wouldn't mind picking up another Spring to Mind. If we're one of the only Simic players, that is. As it currently stands, though, it kind of seems like maybe another Ritualist is actually a good idea. Hash up is also nice. I think we could potentially wheel that Spring to Mine in here. Now we see Open Fire in the pack. And I think that is actually just my pick. It seems a little weird, but with triple Ritualist and a Spring to Mine, we're not going to have any issues finding red mana. I don't think we're really in the market for that. We might not play this desert, but we can certainly splash red for Open Fire. And in terms of Neheb, honestly, with triple Ritualist, we're exerting them for double red. We can hit Neheb. We have 3 sources of double red. I think this card is just absolutely insane. Second Cartouche, not going to complain about that. Evolving Wilds is interesting, but I think we are more than set up to splash. We are going to want to pick up probably some earlier creatures here. We're obviously very heavy in the 4-drop slot. I do think our 4s are good. We're in kind of a weird spot. I think we do have a generally high power level to this deck so far, but we are, like I said, certainly going to want to pick up some earlier defenses here. Don't really think we're a Slitherblade deck. Manglehorn could be interesting. Doesn't really seem like it does much. I think with all the Ritualists we have, I think I'm actually just going to drink here. Manglehorn might have been a better play, but I'm hoping we can find some early creatures here. Got a lot of cards in this pack that I wouldn't mind. I think I like the Censor. I like that more than the strategic planning there. The Green Desert might have also been a good option, especially given the fact that it doesn't really look like we've got a whole lot going on in the early game. It's an interesting one. I think we're in for the Sidewander. It's nothing crazy, but it is good enough, I would say, to pick up. We should have, I would believe, some deserts at some point. We've been seeing them flow pretty heavily. We saw a Hash Up Oasis that we could have picked up, and honestly, that might have been the right pickup. I forget what we chose over it, but we're good in the late game. We've got 2 card draw spells. We've got Ritualist, 2 giant embalm creatures as well. I'm sorry, 1 giant embalm creature. Got plenty of card draw, fair amount of removal, so I don't think we're going to end up playing that, but it is a decent defensive body, I suppose. So here's another interesting pick. We are a little heavy here on the 4s, but it is a good 4. It basically just represents 2 creatures. Don't think we are Floodwaters deck. This card I don't think just does all that well in this format. Now, Champion of Wits, that would be right up our alley here. Wouldn't mind seeing. Ooh, Struggle is actually another really good pickup too. Doubt we'll see that again. I think it's still the Champion though. Represents 2 creatures and a bunch of card advantage. It pretty much does everything you want in 1 card for limited. Alright, so I do think that we kind of want to prioritize. Man, Sand Strangler's pretty good with deserts. You probably need closer to like 4 or 5 deserts though to make this work. I think honestly we just need to stay disciplined, pick up some early creatures. We don't want to get completely shut out before the game even starts here. Don't really want to pick up the Striped Riverwinder here. Amonkhet Excavator doesn't really seem to be doing much. Initiate's Companion is a pretty sad pickup though. Definitely like the Feral Prowlers significantly more. They buy us time in the early game and they even replace themselves. Ramanat probably doesn't make it, but at that point I really don't want to play 2 Initiate's Companions either. We do have, I guess, only 1 ramp spell early on, but on turn 4 with 3 Ritualists, definitely not doing much here with the deserts though. Don't really think we're the reduced deck either. We second Sifter Worm though. I have no idea how good this card is, but I want to try it because I haven't actually played with it before. Don't know if we need a 3rd Avian Initiate, but I'll jump them on in the pack anyways. I'm interested to see how this card does. Two mana. I guess it does basically replace itself if you're on a favorable board state, but you know, we might have trouble getting to those later stages of the game. Ronus's Monument seems pretty sweet. Could also be the Sandworm though. We are really heavy here on the 3-drop slot as well. Probably should have picked up the Sandworm there. Unquenchable Thirst is great. We'll take that. Oh wow. This is another good pack for us. I do like Essence Scatter. And I think that might actually just be the pick here over another Sandworm. We'd love to see another Sandworm if we can. I'd play. Interesting. Don't think we're in that deck, but I could totally see a mill deck in this format really paying off. I've read mill on multiple cards already now. So we're definitely going to have some cuts here. I do think this deck is fairly strong. It's nothing crazy, and you know, I certainly probably did not draft it optimally, but in general, we try to take powerful cards in every pack, so I think we did okay. So I like our 2-drops. We probably don't need 2 Slither Blades, and at 19 creatures, I think we're okay to cut 1. I'm going to put Driven down here. Do think cut all the lands here so we see what we're working with. I really think Nehev is just a liability at this point. Having it stuck in our hand doesn't do us any good, and it's really not that crazy. I'm honestly a little bit disappointed with Neheb in general. When I thought maybe it was going to be significantly stronger when I picked it up, being a 5-mana mythic creature. But this was a different time, honestly, in Magic's history. It was, even though it was only probably 5 or 6 years ago, things have certainly changed, I would say, in terms of power creep and things like that. The open fire, on the other hand, I could very well see being worth it. We could have something like 1 red mana and triple Ritualist. I think it's fine, honestly. So we're at 17 creatures. I don't think the Sidewinder Naga is going to do much for us. I like all of our other creatures, though. Not a huge fan of the Seer. I don't think that's going to do much for us here. Honestly, we're probably just not a Slitherblade deck. 14 creatures is a little scary here, but I guess maybe if we're not splashing the Ritualist, what I probably needed to do is grab like a Greater Sandworm and just have one more giant threat here, because if they deal with our Sifter Worm, we're really not hitting them with much. We're kind of going to depend on this top half of the deck to really get us there. That being said, we do have a pretty fair amount of flyers and card draw to hopefully get us to where we need to be. So I really only think we need like 1 cut. At 14 creatures and 2 cartouches, I don't really want to cut another creature. I like the Monument, though. I think that's one way that we can kind of leverage our green beaters to get us to where we need to be. We'll definitely be playing that 1 desert at least. It's between Monument and Driven to me. I'm not actually sure how good this card is, honestly, but it seems pretty good. Don't really want to cut open fire either. Could be like 1 Aven Initiate. I think it might be between the Ritualist and the Initiate. 14 creatures also seems kind of difficult. We do have a fair amount of cycling. I guess we have multiple cards that do nothing but actually just draw us cards. It's a tough cut. Honestly, I really don't like the companion either. It's not a very good... I think it might just be the companion. I think that just the actual power level of the rest of our cards is high enough. Maybe not. Maybe 13 is just not enough creatures. We'll go with 1 mountain. What we can search up with Spring. Pretty split evenly here. We don't need double green for anything. So we'll go like this. And we'll grab our desert here as well. Is there anything else that we want? I think this is the deck. You know, Neheb might be worth it, especially if we're playing one of the mountains anyways. Kind of just seems like a liability to me. For double red. I think we're going to go without him. And maybe that's a mistake, but 6 toughness is big, and we do really want bigger creatures, but I don't know what we're cutting for it, because everything else in our deck seems to make perfect sense. To me, anyways. I guess the Ronus could be the cut, but the Drakes seem pretty strong. With triple Ritualist, though, is he even better than the Bitterbow? I honestly don't know. I guess he's just good because he can't really be chump blocked, but I think I'll go with this. My reasoning here for not including him is I don't really know what else to cut. Honestly, I want to keep Censor. I want to keep Uncomfortable Thirst. Open Fire is kind of free to splash. But the game that... Oh man, this is kind of brutal. He's on the guessing as well, so we're going to want to get onto the board here as soon as possible. Which, of course, when you have no creatures in hand, is highly unlikely. This is an aggressive format, and I chose to play less creatures for the sake of power level, so... I mean, this is a very, very aggressive start. Our opponent's got 2 creatures on the board on turn 2, so... And bear, huh? Yeah. That sounds kind of crazy, and it's obviously a mana disadvantage, but... Van Bear could also very easily just ruin us as well. So this will ramp us. We'll have access to 5 mana next turn. I think I like the market here a little bit better though. We're certainly in a very precarious position here. Okay, so both us and the basically took a turn off here to kind of get us on the board and ready for action. So my worry is that he has a removal spell this next turn. But I mean, I don't think that we can even risk not having a creature on the board here. Kind of hoping he just holds the creature. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly getting scary. You can give it haste, sure, and make it unblockable, I think. So I guess it's already unblockable given the fact that it's a menace, so. Deciding if he wants to exert, he does. It's actually a great choice by him. So we really need to fade a puncturing blow. Well, that helps a lot, actually. So we really need to fade a puncturing blow here. Now it's cast out. Sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but I guess that was just a misplay. Because it tapped me down. She tapped me anyways, but then he, of course, also misplays. So, how did that? I think we need to just start getting in here. Alright, we need to see Sifter Worm, I think. Yeah, we're going to need to find a way to gain some life here. Using open fire on the token was 100% a mistake. Absolute punt. It is honestly our first game, or one of them anyways, this morning, so... So our opponent can deal at least 2 damage to us here. I think we may have to cycle this hieroglyphic elimination. We'll offer up the trade here. Basically, we need to be able to provide some level of threat to our opponent. It's an interesting choice. Maybe we were supposed to cycle at main phase so that we can play our land there. That might have been a mistake. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here with the Pathmaker. I think he thought he did it the other way around, unfortunately. I think our opponent made a mistake. He meant to use the Pathmaker's ability onto the Bloodlust Inciter. Okay, that's actually not bad. If I had Shed Weakness in my deck, this might have done quite a lot. I think we'll get rid of the Paincaster here. He can exert to deal 1 damage, and then our opponent can trade. I guess he can't actually trade, never mind. So opponent can continue to get in for 1 point of damage. Combat tricks at this point are basically lethal. Definitely a sloppy game here on our end, but it is our first game. Wow, okay, so we definitely needed that. I don't know that we have any looters. So that's actually pretty insane. The fact that I can exert this Ritualist and draw 2 cards. Don't know if it's worth it, obviously, but so we need to fade that, basically. Ugh. Alright, well, sloppy play there on my end. I suppose what I needed to do there was to swing out. Then I guess I don't know that there was a way to win that game actually, because then our opponent would just chump 2 creatures. Or I guess the Ritualist had trample, didn't it? Sloppy play. I think we can chalk it up to that for that first game there. Open firing, obviously, the token there was certainly a mistake. So, a little bit tough on the draw here, but sensor we can always cycle. It might end up being pretty good hitting a 3-drop. If we can just hit our land drops for the next 2 to 3 turns, we will be in a great position. Beautiful, we love to see it. Opponent knows we've got cycling for 1 blue now. That could be multiple cards. They're also in a fairly aggressive, it looks like white-black zombie deck. So hopefully he slams like Lord of the Accursed here. Doesn't look like it's gonna happen though. Savage. Tom did a nice job there playing around Sensor. Okay, so he can make a 1/1 with that Steward, which is fine, but we kind of needed to use some mana there, I think. He's basically going to decide if he wants to get damage in or make a 1/1. I think he makes the right choice there. It's interesting. So we're not in a horrible position here. He is going to have access to plenty of removal, but the fact that he doesn't use his mana on turn 4 is obviously a pretty big break for us. I think we're going to go with the Ritualist here. We'll see if it survives. Could have like a Splendid Agony. I don't know if Cast Out has Flash. I know it has Cycling. So we'll see here. Okay, well. It's pretty insane. I think I'm going to play the Aven Initiate, hope that he doesn't actually have Exiles removal, and maybe it was better to play this first. And these kind of dorky 1/1s have actually just... Okay. Phew. Okay, well, we're getting beat up pretty bad here, but if we can find Sifter Worm, we might be in an okay position. Get another flyer out on the board here. Definitely in a very precarious position here. Opponent is hopefully out of gas here though, because he is currently giving us the business with all of these little dorky 1/1s. Oh man. Really loading up the board here. This is starting to get very scary in the sense that... Alright, so we get a little bit of breathing room at least. Yeah, the Trespasser's Curse here is actually starting to really put in some work. I think at this point it's kind of Sifter Worm or bust, so we're basically just going to allow our opponent... Oh man. So he gets to trade in his Doom Dissenter for a 2/2 while also getting rid of our Bitter Bow. Yeah. This honestly might just be game. Tough. Very cool Orzhov aggro deck, though, from our opponent. Pretty neat. Jeru's Resolve as well. I love it. If we hit Sifter Worm, we might be okay here. And I think because we need to hit it now, we don't actually have time to cast anything but Sifter Worm. Unfortunately, I don't see a way out here. Well, what I can do at least is draw some cards. And hit Forest. Sweet. Great game from the opponent there. Rough start to the draft. First game, I thought we honestly just played a little bit sloppily. Second game, we just got run over, and I mean that's kind of it's kind of to be expected when you're cutting your 2-drops the way that we have. Of course, we have also just played against very aggressive decks in general, but I think it might be worth it to bring in the Pathmaker Initiate, maybe cut Driven. We already have plenty of sources of card advantage in this deck. Also, I'm thinking the Monument might not really be quite where we want it to be. Do we have any other desert payoffs for something like a Desert of the Fervent? Because given the fact that we really want to hit all of our land drops, might honestly not be a bad idea if we throw in this additional desert. Maybe even have, given the fact that we're 0-2 in the draft so far, I think we're gonna do it. Just because at this point we don't have much to lose. So I think we're currently at 16 lands. We didn't have our Amonkhet sleeves on either, which I'm sure is a big part of that. I think we're going to play with Neheb here. Don't actually know how good he is, but at this point, we don't even have much to lose. So, and I think we'll just cut a Drake for him. Maybe that's not correct. 14 creatures. I think we'll just run it like this then. That second Sifter Worm that we saw, is this still 16 lands? Yeah. Do we want a 17th land? You know what? I think with the hand smoother, we're just going to go for it. 16 lands, let's get it done. But what I was saying before is Sifter Worm, we actually saw a second copy of it float through the draft. I forget what we picked up over it, but obviously there have been multiple games now in this format, and a very aggressive format, where we played against Boros aggro and Orzhov aggro. Sifter Worm would have been insane there. Not only is it an absolutely massive creature at 7 mana, but it fixes your draws for the next, presumably, 2 turns, normally at least. And then on top of that, you can kind of manipulate the top of your library to gain you a good amount of life. This, of course, man, if our opponent is playing any form of aggression, we just get bopped. That being said, these are our boys. You know what? I'm keeping it. And there's a good chance that we just get run over by Dustwalkers, but it is what it is. Definitely going to need to hit some land drops here, though. Cycles the Curator, so that tells me our opponent also needs to get land drops. They're on an Izzet strategy. Firebrand is definitely difficult to play against. We do hit our second land, which is a blessing. So we'll see what our opponent has on 3. They can certainly play around Censor here, which would be pretty difficult. Sure. I think we'll cycle away the Censor now. Alright, so we're hitting our land drops. And I actually think now that... Actually, I think it is Spring to Mind. What I'm hoping is that... I guess I won't be able to hold up Essence Scatter anyways. Alright, so we need Ritualist to survive 1 turn. If they use a removal spell on it, it's not really the end of the world. We're actually really well set up, I think. If our opponent has his combat tricks, hopefully he uses them now. Doesn't look like he does. Instead he cycles again. So we don't have to worry about Essence Scatter here, which is great. So that's 7 mana. I think we will right in the head. What this will allow us to do is hold up Essence Scatter. So Cartouche is pretty great. I'm not sure why he did that. Hopefully he plays another creature here. We don't want him to hold up Essence Scatter. Tough. Certainly seems like he could be holding up Essence Scatter, but imagine he just takes this. I'm doing this so that I get 3 additional. Oh wow, we'd love to see that. Okay. Yeah. We love to see the fact that he tapped out all of his mana there. I think we want to hold up our Essence Scatter. Opponent also seems to be holding up Essence Scatter. Alright. Oh no, so I guess we don't get his effect if he doesn't survive. That's unfortunate. I probably should have just known that, but... So we have access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. It's not great. Alright, then we'll try to maximize value here. This should allow us to also hold up the Essence Scatter. And I think we should be in a good position. Alright. Alright, so we're on the board at least. Sifterworm is just so much fun. Looks like our opponent plays League of Legends. This is a great hand if we can just survive here. I can't ask for much more. We hit one land drop and we are in business. I think our opponent did take a mulligan. So I do think Magic Arena tends to favor players after a little while. Some games are just insane. This draw, if we hit another land, is absolutely insane. Of course, we are going to want to hit that land here sooner than later. See if our opponent cycles. Looks like he might have Censor or something. Okay. So 1 mana cycler. Out of the way. So far we are seeing mono blue here. Could be mono blue now. Alright, we're probably going to be cycling. We will be cycling the Drake. It's kind of one of the corner cases here where cycling actually does a lot for us. Opponent gets aggressive here, we don't mind that. So it does look like our opponent is, I guess, almost like on a self-mill strategy. They're not mono blue, they're Dimir, which is like a cycling synergistic deck. But I think this only self-mills, so I'm not that worried about it, I guess. What I am worried about, however, is Ritualist surviving, because it's looking a little iffy here. That being said, we kind of need it. Don't think we have any other options. Maybe it was Aven Initiate would have been the better play there. Really need the Ritualist to survive here. Ideally, our opponent taps down for a creature. So if we're playing around Splendid Agony, we can block the Vizier. I don't think there's plus anything in Death Touch. Alright. So that was a risky block. To block 1 point of damage, it almost certainly just was not worth it. That being said, though, I imagine whatever we cast here gets countered. It's going to be a little unfortunate if it's Censor that counters it, but other than that... Okay, we don't mind that, honestly. I think we're on the defensive plan. I think the scariest thing that we could see right now is Scarab God. It doesn't look like our opponent has much really going on in terms of like power level in their deck. So what kind of worries me is if they first pick the Scarab God and are now just if they first pick the Scarab God, excuse me, and then just started drafting blue and black after that, which is a completely viable strategy in my opinion. That being said, I think we'll go with Nab here. I don't think my opponent could counter that. He could bounce it. I forget if Unsummon made the cut into the set. I know it was, I'm pretty sure at least I thought it was in Amonkhet block. If I remember, it kind of looked like that Slither Blade was getting bounced. I could be completely wrong about that, but I thought I remembered unsummon being a thing. Decides to cycle that with the Rivulet. Interesting. Maybe he needs to find the answer to Neheb now. Something like Cartouche of Ambition would be annoying. So we take a pretty fat hit here. So we'll see if our opponent has removal for the Neheb. Okay, we'll certainly take that. Now, opponent can still have Essence Scatter. In an effort to play around it, we'll play Initiate here. Looks like that one got through. I think we're actually just going to Unquenchable Thirst the Shimmer Scale Drake. I'm glad we did that after he used Commit, because he could just bounce his Drake and fizzle our Unquenchable. Basically, we just need our opponent to tap out so that we can start slamming Sifter Worm and Cartouche. Other than that, though, our opponent does have access to more cards than us, as Dimir often will do, but our board presence is certainly stronger, and we do have powerful spells here to back them up. And now we have 6 power in the air every turn. Hopefully he plays his bomb here, his Archfiend of Ilfnir or something, and we can slam Sifter Worm and Cartouche it away or something. I'm using the tank, Lethal Sting. They don't actually mind that very much at all, I don't think. We're playing around Splendid Agony again. It needs to be this way. I think we're just going to embalm this turn until our opponent taps down. I really feel like we need to be playing around Essence Scatter. There are multiple counterspells that he could have that would just completely bone us pretty much. Alright, there it is. Oh, but he actually decides not to counter it and instead is digging deeper for his bomb, which is fine. He does know that we're going to be getting the Neheb here shortly, so he needs to find answers to that. I guess we were getting to the point here shortly where we could actually pay for Neheb, pay for that Supreme Will, excuse me, I think it's 4, or is it 3? 3, yeah, so we would be in a position where we could just pay for it. So, opponent made the right call, I think. Still waiting to see kind of what the end game is here from our opponent. He's drawn a lot of cards. So if he's got the Splendid Agony, he needs to use it now, which is fine. Sure, there it is. So if our opponent casts another spell here, interesting. Okay. So we're at 20 cards still, so I'm not really worried. About being milled out. Also, if that's his game plan now, he can't actually afford to use the second half of that. We'll gain 1 billion life. And if his plan is to try to mill me out 3 cards at a time, he is more than welcome to. If he's got final reward or something like that, that's fine too. We want him to tap out as much as possible. Still playing his land, which makes me feel like he might have... Oh my. Okay. Fight Cartouche onto the Aven Initiate. This doesn't have reach, right? No, it does have transport. Eat the blocker. We can then get in for 4 in the air. And now we'll present 2 basically lethal threats this next turn. If either one of them get through, we can open fire for the rest of the game. Sifter Worm is obviously terrifying. Would have loved to see a late claim in that draft. And maybe I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure I would have just snapped it off. But I guess it is possible. It's a fat chunk here from the Sifter Worm. Don't think we have any bounce. Alright, we're good there. So that was, I guess, the ultimate game plan there for the opponent was to eventually just slam late claim on our biggest creature, which, to be fair, is a Sifter Worm, so they got, you know, they certainly did what they needed to do there, but by the time they got it down, we had already gotten most of the value from Sifter Worm, which is what I shouldn't say most of the value, but we had already gotten enough value from Sifter Worm that it didn't actually really feel like we went down a card. Once again, we are subject to, you know, however our deck wants to treat us here, but we do hit our 3rd land here, and it looks like we're in a little bit of a mirror match, so see if our opponent wants to play around. Go ahead and get him with the realness here, and now we're kind of putting ourselves into a place where you know, he could slam. Okay, so certainly take that. I think I'm good with going for the Ritualist here. If my opponent taps out next turn, I'll exert the Ritualist for Neheb, just so that we can guarantee get around any counter spells. Sure. see if our opponent is flashing. So we really want our opponent to tap out again this turn so we can... Okay. So really hoping our opponent actually has a redraft as well here. If he... Damn. So he could have countervailing winds. Really, I think it's more so we're going for it. Wow, and we get there. Awesome. Really, I think I was more so worried about him having a combat trick there. Certainly don't think that game was over, but I could definitely understand why my opponent would get frustrated at that. So we're climbing back a little bit here from a tough 0-2 start up to 3-2 now, and I do think the deck is good. It's certainly, you know, it certainly has its weakness, especially in the early game. As you guys saw, we got absolutely run over by the aggressive decks. Is it enough to just start slamming even initiates? Could be. It's a fine hand otherwise, honestly. I think we're going to keep it. Worst case scenario, we really don't see another land by turn 4. We can cycle the Drake. Opponent is playing red, so they're on a Gruul deck, looks like. Looks like a Gruul, prowessy, combat trick type deck. Yep. Oh yeah. This is a pretty neat strategy though. I actually haven't played against it very much here. And I do think that we're going to cycle here. We're really hoping to find a creature of some sort sometime soon anyways. Like if our opponent just starts slamming magma sprays on these Aven initiates, we're in some serious trouble. And this is a pretty big difference, I would say, about playing, about best of one versus on the draw. Sorry, being on the play in best of one versus being on the draw. I mean, we absolutely have to start getting some board presence down here. We're about to take a huge hit from the Neff drop container. Yep. This is brutal. Awesome deck from our opponent, though. It's kind of a pretty interesting take on one of the aggressive strategies in the format. Also one that I think is not drafted very much. I think sometimes people underestimate a little bit of like how strong Firebrand Archer and Nimble Blade Kenrick can be in combat trick heavy decks instead of like your more typical visit. We're just donezo. Impressive showing, and honestly, a very greedy team on our end. We didn't do anything there basically until turn 4. So against a deck like our opponent with the start that they had, we got worked. But overall, I think this deck was a lot of fun. Certainly probably could have done some things differently in the draft portion, but I think it turned out pretty great. We did get to slam the head multiple times, so maybe we should have been playing him from the beginning. I knew Ritualist was good, not only from my experience in the past with it, but also I do watch the limited resources events, the playlists where they talk about the different sets. So I watched the Amonkhet Remastered primer. They kind of went on about Ritualist, and honestly, yeah, it's just does everything you want it to, buys you time, helps you splash immensely. I mean, I think we only actually ended up doing it once, just because our draws ended up kind of favoring hard casting it, or just getting one red source and using Ritualist to cast it. But we did fully exert with simic mana a Ritualist to slam the Heb the Eternal on turn 5. I mean, that's just awesome. That's just good magic. It's one of the reasons why green is so much fun to play in general. Probably, if between green and black are my favorite colors in the color pie, and it makes just a lot of fun. Never saw Champion of Wits. Would have been, especially like in that last game, would have been a pretty nice play on turn 3, but it is what it is. Spring to Mind was pretty great. It helps a lot. It turned out that we played 3 hyper aggressive decks, and we didn't really have time to make full use of it. Overall, it was a fun deck. I think you guys got to see just how insanely aggressive the format is. The games that we played against: Boros aggro, Orzhov aggro with Trespasser's Curse and token generations, and then just now Gruul monsters that kind of leverages prowess to get in additional points of damage through Firebrand Archer and Nimble Blade Kenra. Against the aggressive decks, this deck does a pretty nice job of going over the top and honestly buying you time, but you just don't have the time, I guess, in this format. And that was a very aggressive deck and a very greedy keep from me, but overall, a lot of fun. I'm going to keep grinding this format. I think it's significantly more fun, in my opinion, than Core Set 2021. Also a fun format, and also a very aggressive format. But this is exciting. It's nostalgic, and I'm really, really glad Wizards decided to do this event. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.